I had taken a romance language class, which it was it was based on Latinx culture, but I had taken it because like the Philippines has a huge history with like the Spanish and things like that. So I thought, like, why don't I join this class? But it was there that I had heard of the model minority myth, and it was so weird to me because it was like the first time I had heard about it, but I had been experiencing it like all my life.
Welcome to the SituAsian Room, a journey into Asian America. We dive deep into the issues in the Asian American community, from questions like, where are you really from? And representation, to sharing foods and our own experiences. My name is Emilie Villaverde.
And I'm Zach. On this episode, we invite Julia Lopez into the SituAsian Room to discuss the model minority myth and more. So stay tuned. Coming up first, we'll dish it out with some new Asian cuisines.
Welcome back to the Dish It Out table, guys. So last episode, if you guys remember, Zach and I challenged each other to do a little bit of research and look up different dishes in the AAPI community that we weren't really that familiar with. So Zach actually challenged me to look up gulab jamun.
Yes.
This is a soft and delicious ball of dough that's usually deep fried, and it's served with a rose-infused sugar syrup, which is like really fancy. I was staring at the pictures, and it's just so beautifully presented.
It's good stuff.
But yeah, so gulab jamun, it's most popular in India and also in Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Myanmar.
Ooh.
These are kind of like donuts, or if you're from the Northeast, zeppelis. Zach, do you know what I'm talking about?
No, what is a zeppeli?
So it's an Italian. Oh my goodness, it's like Italian fried dough.
It's not a Jersey thing.
It's boardwalk food.
I've never
fried like dough.
I gotta go to the shore. Gee.
It's served with like powdered sugar,
like a funnel cake.
It's kind of like funnel cake, but instead of the web of like the little webbing that comes in, it's just a ball of dough. It's not exactly a donut, but it's not exactly funnel cake. It's kind of like right in the middle, and you usually get you just get a small tray of like 6 of them, and they're so good.
Okay, kind of like a munchkin, but not.
It's kind of like a munchkin or a donut hole.
Okay,
but not. It's more because it's deep fried. It's like it's part of that greasy boardwalk food.
Yeah. Oh my god,
But yeah, this actually reminded me of zeppelis. And that like really good shore summer food.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they're kind of like donuts. The only difference is that it has a milk solid base. But I was looking at them. It's kind of served similar. They're like about the size of my palm. And they come in like you can get like a plate of like maybe like I think 5 or 6 is the usual serving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's from what I've seen on pictures. I've never tried it myself, but it's drenched in this like sugar syrup that's like infused with rose water.
Yeah, I love them. I mean, so like at some Indian restaurants, you can get them to go in like a little plastic container, like a to-go container, and it's like filled with the syrup, and there's like some floating in there.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was from and because I didn't try it, I am guilty. I did the Google searches I looked through Google Images, but I wasn't sure if it was just it's served kind of like dry and you drizzle the syrup over it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting that you said that it's actually like you get the Tupperware and it's filled with the sugar syrup and the gulab jamun is like floating on top of it almost.
Yeah, those are a favorite of mine. You actually challenged me to look more into onigiri, which is a Japanese dish. It is like, it's a dish, snack, handheld thing. It reminds me of like if a bao, like the Japanese version of a bao, because the outside has like a carb. It's like there's rice on the outside, and inside there's a filling.
Mm-hmm.
And so the filling, it can be a lot of things. I mean, like a lot of times they put different kinds of like fish and meat. Personally, I've only had shrimp and tempura as like the filling.
Ooh.
That was really good. I've only had it like a few times, but only from a little farmer's market stand. Other than that, typically they're found in like Japanese convenience stores, but I've never run into them like on a menu or anything like that, or like there's no Japanese convenience stores where I live. So
It's kind of like that, like to go easy, like little like grab and go foods.
mhm.
So like it's kind of like a lot of like kids in Japan would bring onigiri to school and have it in like their little lunch bentos. And the reason why I assigned this to you is because with this I knew you weren't going to have an exact answer with what goes inside it, and that's the beauty of it because you can really customize it. I know you said that the first time you tried it, it was shrimp tempura filling inside it. I've had it with miso salmon in it, spicy tuna. I've even tried it with a tofu stuffed inside, which is really good.
Ooh.
But yeah, it's really like simple, it's easy to make, and it's honestly it's really fun to make. I've made it once. It's really hard. You have to like get your hands like really like greasy so that the rice doesn't stick,
Mhm.
but it's so good. And it
Ooh.
fills you up.
Yeah, and like it's good because it's kind of when I ate it was messy. Maybe it's just because I'm messy, but yeah, they do have like the nori on the outside to help you
Mhm.
eat it.
That's
So it's
supposed to help you from keeping the rice sticking to your fingers.
yeah, yeah.
All right. But yeah, that's those are the dishes that Zach and I challenged each other for this episode of Dish It Out. For our next episode, when we come back to the Dish It Out table, Zach and I are actually going to be switching back to bringing dishes from our own cultures. So stay tuned. Coming up next, we have our topic interview on the model minority myth with Julia Lopez. Okay, welcome back to the SituAsian Room. For this week, we're going to be talking about the model minority myth. And our guest speaker for this week is Julia Lopez. Hey, Julia.
Welcome, Julia.
Hi. Hello.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yes, sure. So my name is Julia Lopez. I am in Athens, Georgia, kind of near the border of South Carolina. I attend the University of Georgia. I'm a rising senior. And I major in biological anthropology and minor in human development and family science.
Ooh,
I'm Filipino American, so I'm excited to be on the SituAsian Room
yes,
podcast.
We're so excited to have you.
yes.
Okay, so let's just jump right into it. This week is the model minority myth. And what is it? So, according to Teaching Tolerance, it's based in stereotypes. So, in relation to Asian Americans, it perpetuates a narrative in which Asian Americans are whiz kids or musical geniuses, and they're raised in a way where they have to work hard and strive to be the best that they possibly could. This is considered, a positive that generalizes a group with traits that are admirable. So, like I already said, for Asian Americans, this includes traits including high intelligence, obedience, and good work ethic. When was the first time you guys actually heard about the model minority myth?
Julia, you want to take it away? You're our guest.
Sure. So, well, for me, the model minority myth, I feel like I actually first learned about it through the stereotypes that were put onto Asians. The actual term model minority myth, I didn't actually hear until my freshman year of college. Oh, that's so weird to say, like I'm like a rising senior now. And I had taken a romance language class, which it was it was based on Latinx culture, but I had taken it because like the Philippines has a huge history with like the Spanish and things like that. So I thought, like, why don't I join this class? But it was there that I had heard of the model minority myth, and it was so weird to me because it was like the first time I had heard about it, but I had been experiencing it like all my life. I don't know if that's how you guys like have
That,
felt.
yeah. No, I feel the same way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was just like, whoa, like now I actually have, it's like when you have a name to a face. I have like a name to this experience that I've had all my life as a Filipino and moreover as an Asian American here, especially like in the south of the US.
No, that's a great way to put it, like a name to a face. I never thought about it like that until you said it. For me, I think the first time I really heard the term, it was my senior year of high school. and I was doing like writing a TEDx talk because our high school had like a TEDx club, and I was supposed to do a talk, and I you'll have all these like feelings and stuff and emotions bottled up from being Asian American, and like I also grew up in like a predominantly white area. I think the three of us did, in different geographies, but and so you get stereotyped as like a nerd and like good at math and all these different things, and so that had happened like my entire life up until well, it still happens, but I never knew the words that actually were the name to that face.
Yeah, honestly, for me, I'm the same way as you guys. I never knew the term model minority. I've pretty much just been living it. I mean, my parents raised me, to work super hard and try to be the best that I could possibly be. And it really did define who I was, especially in the academic setting, because everybody in my classes just growing up they kind of just assumed all the Asian kids were the smarter kids in the group. There was like no explanation for it. It could have been, anything from just strong work ethic or, parents just having high expectations on their kids. And for me, that all played into a factor, and I felt it. It's like what you said, Julia, like you don't really know what it is, but it's just there. And I grew up with this, and I never really knew until, honestly, I think I heard the term model minority also like coming into college, just because I didn't really know a whole lot about my Asian American background, and I really didn't pay much attention to it until I came to college, and I started with all of the Asian American orgs on my campus. And like, I don't know, it was really weird learning about it and being able to put like that name to a face.
I think moreover, being like Filipino also made it really kind of confusing for me because I don't know, I have like the thought and kind of like I think a lot of Filipinos have the feeling of kind of being in the middle of the Asian cultures and the Spanish culture. That's why, like, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but a lot of people call the Filipinos the Mexican of the Asians.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, my last
Yeah,
name is Lopez. Like,
I've heard
people,
that.
Oh, pretty girl.
yeah, exactly. Like all of like the Ortegas, the
My mom's
Villanuevas.
making Reyes.
Yeah, like all that time that people thought that I was Latinx or Hispanic X.
Just
Sorry. Yeah. All the time that people thought that I was from there, it was just like I'm not. And then when I would tell them that I'm Asian, then they change their whole attitude on me. And it's like, yo, like I'm still me. Like, why did you guys change? And it's because I personally think it's because of the model minority myth, and also just like the stereotypes that they learned throughout time.
Mm-hmm. And that can also cause just a problem for people within that fit into that model minority group, because you know everyone's trying to find where their identity fits best, whether it's with one group or another. And especially for Filipinos, just like for me growing up, sometimes I didn't fit a certain, like, am I Asian or am I not? So if you like, especially when you don't find a group where you really fit in, it's really hard on the person. You don't really know what to do at that point. It just makes going through life a little bit more confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. On the topic of identity though, and like related to the model minority myth, it's weird because like I feel like a lot of people internalize this. And for a while I did too, like growing up in like middle school and like a bit of high school, because you're just expected to do well in school and in like career wise and in general. And you're expected to just always perform well, which is it's pressure, because every parent wants their kids to do well, but it's everyone just expects you to be in the highest level. And then so something that I noticed is like I would joke about it a lot. I'd be like, oh, I got this. I'll just summon the power of like my Asianness to take this test. And it would be like stupid jokes. And like now, like I've completely come around. I was like 13, but now I realize like it's stupid. But I see my brother, like my little brother, do it. He's 16 now, and he'll joke about it to his white friends, because most of our friends are white because we live in the white suburbs. And so like another thing I saw is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Andrew Yang's campaign. Like Andrew Yang and his policies aside, like that's something he would do on the campaign trail, is like his pitch to primarily white voters. He would joke and say, oh, like he knows a lot of lawyers and doctors because he's Asian. I don't know, it just keeps perpetuating, and like it's a self-internalization of like, how do we get people to accept us? And it's by going along with like these stereotypes.
Yeah, and in terms of just the model minority myth, another one of the problems is, especially for the Asian American community, mental health is just something that we don't really talk about. I know that, growing up, if there were problems, we weren't expected to really share it with our parents, just because it's almost as if, like, I don't want to say that they don't believe in, mental health and those issues, but it's more so like they want you to push through it. Even if they do understand that something might be, a problem for you, they want you to continue to strive and, be that better individual that you possibly could be. And I was looking at the American Psychological Association, the APA, and they did a study on Asian Americans and mental health. And because of the model minority myth, there were a bunch of students, there were Asian Americans within the ages of 18 and 30 that reported several common sources of stress and overall problems with their mental health due to, that parental pressure, in terms of academics and just careers, and also the pressure to live up to that model minority stereotype, which, what they quote is a view that inaccurately portrays Asian Americans as successfully integrating into mainstream culture and having overcome the challenges of racial bias. So I think it's the model minority myth, while it does portray all those, admirable traits, high intelligence and that strong work ethic, it does cause a problem for, us Asian Americans when we do run into those problems and we feel like we can't go to someone for help or, seek guidance, because it's just not the common thing for us to do.
I mean, you're right. Like the model minority myth is so problematic for a list of different reasons, and one of them being that it assumes that there's no problems in the Asian American community. But another problem I want to talk about, Julia, I want you to jump in, is about like how it was used as a racial wedge, and how it's a tool between the African American and Asian American community.
Yeah, so when I going back to that freshman class that I was taking, when I learned about it, like I said, I was in a intro to Latinx culture and literature class. So I learned about the model minority myth in a Latinx view. So if anything, when you talk about racial wedge, that's literally all we learned, because of the fact that I feel like if I was taking an Asian American class and they talked about the model minority myth, it's different than the way that they would have taught it in a different ethnicity type of class. Wait, what was the question again? Oh, the racial wedge. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good.
I apologize. And I think something to kind of talk about, like racial wedge wise, is I think you're probably going to talk about it soon. Is the history of it. Talking about like the immigration laws and stuff. I don't want to get into that until you guys say I can.
Go ahead. What do you mean? You're a guest. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, like, whenever I think of model minority myth, the first thing I think of is the history of it. And if people don't know, it's literally based on I'm not even gonna say one immigration act, because it's just a culmination of immigration acts in history, whether that be the one from early 1900s, the mid 1900s to, or I guess like 1920 type of mid, or like 1960, like that 1965 immigration law, like
yeah.
that hit, like that really hit. um and that was kind of the first thing that I noticed when I learned about this, was that um like white America and the people who were in control of immigration really said like, "Hey yo, like Asians, you allowed in, but only if you know how to work." And it's
Yeah.
like that's definitely what I feel like that's one of the biggest reasons why the model minority myth even has the conception that all Asians are able to work, because back then in 1965 you weren't allowed in unless you could work, unless you
Yeah.
had some type of skill that white America could use. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah. I was looking into the 1965 Act. It was like a completely an accident that like the people who wrote it never thought that they would change the racial makeup of the U.S. It's an extension of the Civil Rights Act, and I know with the resurgence of Black Lives Matter, a lot of people are talking like, especially in the Asian American community, saying that like we owe it to the Black community because of the 1965 Act. And that has a lot of merit because my family wouldn't be here because they came in the early 70s, and so yeah, anything really before 1965 is you had to like sneak in through like paper sons or be here way 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 before.
Mm-hmm.
um, but the 1965 Act, I have the order, but it has this weird, it abolishes quotas by country and focuses basically by hemisphere, but prefers uh, people to reunite families and professional technical workers, people with educations. So people are like, oh, why are all these Asians making so much money? Or I think that's a big argument. Is like they look at median incomes, and I think I have, yeah, like all Asian Americans, when you aggregate the data together, the median income, according to Pew, is $73,000 versus all Americans is $53,000 per household income. So people are like, is Asian privilege a thing? And America picks the types of immigrants it wants. It's that simple. And so when you select only people who are, or mostly people who are highly educated, you're going to get people who make higher incomes, and their kids will most likely follow that same path and making higher incomes.
Mm-hmm.
And so on top of the 1965 Act, you have like H-1B visas, which is like a whole new wave of Asian immigration, especially in tech jobs. Julie, do you want to talk more about like types of jobs Asians stereotypically have, and
Well, I would, before I even think like say anything about jobs, I think something that I want to begin like the whole jobs conversation about Asians is the fact that the model minority myth really generalizes the Asians, kind of like what you said. And it's kind of sad because when people think of Asians, they have this image already in their head, and then with that, like an occupation. But when you really look at the diversity of America, I must say United States actually, of the United States, it's like, you know, just because you're say what's a successful type of Asian, like a lot of Indian Americans or a lot of Indians are in tech jobs, and those obviously get a higher salary and higher income than say here in Georgia we have a large forgive me if I pronounce this wrong,
yeah,
Hmong population. And those Hmong people are usually in more of like the service industry jobs. So it's like you're comparing someone who can like afford to live in California,
hmm,
who might be in like a tech business, compared to someone who's Hmong here in Georgia, who is like in like the rural part. Like it's very cheap here in Georgia in certain parts. And so it's like when you say Asian, like which one are you talking about? It's such a diverse and
yeah.
such a an array of kinds of Asians, not just culturally, but also socioeconomically. Forgive me.
No, you're good. No, like to support what you're saying, like the average median income for Indian Americans is $100,000, which is like the highest, I think.
Okay,
And
nice.
those are mostly H-1B visas, and then for Hmong Americans, it's $48,000, which is not even half. And so when you
Mhm.
aggregate all the data, you wouldn't know. And people use it, and they say, there's no problems with the Asian community. Uh, but if you look at like the API poverty rate is higher than the white poverty rate. I believe the national average too. And so it's problematic because it argues that there's no systemic barriers, or that the systemic barriers that we have in place in America can be overcome by a racial wedge. Or yeah.
Yeah, and then speaking of like Indian Americans, I don't know if we're ready to talk about media, but I got some stuff to say about media.
Go ahead.
now,
Go
too.
ahead.
Do it.
I was just gonna say, like, like what you just said, like Indian Americans are Indian, or parentheses Indian Americans. They earn so much here in America. You would think that they would have some kind of stand here, or some kind of like, higher look like white Americans would look higher upon them. Wait, how am I wording this? Look highly above upon them. Is that English?
Yeah.
I think that's English.
That's okay.
But like, I remember there's this one, oh my gosh, who is it? Ashton Kutcher. Ashton Kutcher, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but Ashton Kutcher plays I want to say he's an Indian producer.
It's a commercial, right?
It's a commercial.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
Exactly. And he's like, I think he's like supposed to be someone on like a dating site or something. And it's just like, you have these successful Indian Americans. You would think that they'd be able to find an Indian American rather than, Ashton Kutcher playing this,
Yeah.
Asian person.
Yeah, no, media representation is a big problem. Em, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so let's go, because Julia already mentioned the commercial, let's just go into, the model minority myth seen in the media. I don't know about you guys, but I think starting high school and moving into college, for me, the one, Asian character that really sticks out and that really stuck out to me during those years was, I watched Grey's Anatomy, so Dr. Cristina Yang was like one of my like most favorite, most admirable characters that I looked up to in those like high school into college years, just because she was a hardcore, Asian surgeon. And I don't like, normally I haven't really seen a lot of, Asian representation in the media growing up. So to see Grey's Anatomy and see this this Asian surgeon, she's so, I keep saying she's so hardcore because she really is. She really she goes for it. All the surgeries from, when she was an intern up until she was an attending surgeon, she tried to snag every opportunity that was thrown, not just in her way, but all of her, like the people in her group. She just, whatever opportunity there was, whether it was, just watching a surgery or leading one, she was always the first one to be like, okay, this is mine. I definitely need to take this. I need to be the one in the operating room. And I thought it was just badass. I've never seen that just portrayed in the media. Like, but it was like the first time I think I really saw that, besides, what I've seen like in Disney Channel, which was the complete opposite.
So
Yeah,
do you
that's an
think
example. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I was like, dang, she really got like a really good example, because I actually only started recently. Actually, no, like probably I started Grey's Anatomy in college, but when she was like, yeah, that's the complete opposite of Disney Channel characters, and I was been like, that's my example. But I was gonna use London Tipton, which I think is a good contrast because she is like the opposite of Cristina Yang.
So tell us more about London Tipton. Explain
Oh,
for
God.
people who've never watched A Sweet Life of Zach and Cody.
Oh gosh, London Tipton. Wait, first of all, did you guys know that London Tipton is supposed to be like the Paris Hilton?
Yeah.
My mind was blown when I found that out. I was like, no way, it could not be London Tipton, but it was. But for people who don't know, London Tipton, or The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, London Tipton is the daughter of the hotel owner. Is she like an heiress? She's an heiress.
Yeah,
right?
she's an heiress.
Yeah, she's an heiress, and she's Asian. She's played by Brenda Song. Love her. But in the actual series, she's not exactly what the model minority would think an Asian would be, which I think is kind of cool in a way, because I feel like that was one of the first times I was like, oh, not all Asians have to be smart, because this is London Tipton, the one who's calling it the Prindle, and the one who's like, yay me, like, this is London Tipton. Like,
Forgot
she didn't
that.
have anything on Ashley Tisdale, who was the white blonde girl who, was a lot smarter than her, and the one that London cheated off on. It just blew my mind because as an Asian, I always had kind of against like the, what is it, like the blonde white girl. They're
Yeah,
supposed
the
to be like
dumb
ditzy
blonde.
and stuff. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so to see that switch, I was like, is there a possibility for me? Like, do I have to be this smart?
Yeah. No, I think both of you guys make a good point that like Asian representation has come a long way away from the model minority myth. But the problem is like the fact that we find that so exciting means that there's a problem and that it's been
Yeah.
terrible before. But like even in the Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, Barbara Brownstein, I don't know if you remember, she was this really nerdy Asian. She was one of their girlfriends. I don't remember Zach or Cody.
Cody's girlfriend in
Cody's
like
girlfriend, yeah.
beginning seasons of Sweet Life of Zach and Cody.
I don't know if you remember what she looks like, but
I-
super nerdy and like fits the model minority perfectly. Julie, have you ever watched Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide?
Yes.
Yes. Do you remember Evelyn?
Oh my gosh, I don't think so. I just love Coconut Head, honestly.
I almost had
love
coconut
Evelyn.
head hair. I was close.
Julia, Evelyn was the hardcore Asian girl that was also incredibly smart, and she threatened Cookie. Like
Yeah,
she
they were like
it was
rivals,
yeah.
Oh, did they end up together or something? That's always what
kind
happens.
of.
Like they're
It was
rivals.
There was one episode where she kissed him.
it was really weird.
Not
It
for
was
an
yeah.
Asian.
Mom,
Mom.
I don't know if you ever watched Zoe 101 either, but Firewire from Zoe 101 was like the hacker, like nerdy Asian
I
guy.
feel like I remember kind of, but
Yeah,
like I said, like
they're all minor
suitcase.
characters. Yeah, that's the thing is like
Yeah.
there are no like besides Brenda Song, Brenda Song's London. They're all minor characters. So even when they're there, they're the model minority, which is not ideal for us at all. But I know Mean Girls is a really popular movie among people our age. And in the opening scene of Mean Girls, they like go through like the cliques at the lunch tables, and one of them is the Asian nerds. Um, and then for people older than us, and then like more classic movies, you have like Data from Goonies. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but he had like all these different gadgets and a really thick accent. It was super nerdy. In the Green Hornet series back in like Bruce Lee days, Kato was the sidekick scientist inventor. And then the Dark Knight, I don't know if you're a superhero fan, Lau, he was like this weird like Hong Kong millionaire character. And there's a quote, it's from him, like I said, I'm good with calculation. And it's just, I don't know, there's a constant portrayal, no matter like the genre, of Asian Americans as the model minority, which reinforces it on top of like different immigration acts. But I think we should also talk about like why is the model minority a thing at all? Because we didn't make it up, Asian Americans didn't make it up.
Why is it a thing?
Yeah.
I feel
Just
like I
jump
have
in.
an answer in my head, but I don't know if
Just say
it's
it.
the right answer. My answer was gonna be it was helpful to like white Americans. I don't know
Yes.
if that's the answer. Okay.
Okay, we're just gonna okay. So we're gonna say like, how do we get here? How do we get to the model minority? Like, what happened that the model minority was created? So the points I have were to prove we weren't racist towards Asians, so the communists wouldn't win. Racial wedge because we blame things on black people. And part of the thing I was finding in my research was the U.S. government pushed us up as like this model minority because they pretended to love Asians for a little bit during the Cold War because they were afraid that the Soviets would turn it against us and our and the mistreatment of minorities and to recruit people and undermine the U.S. So the State Department would put out a lot of things, praising people. The media would talk about how Japanese were quote rising from the ashes, after concentration camps, and proving that they had the right cultural stuff. and that's from Professor Claire Jean Kim at UC Irvine. But this idea of the model minority myth and the narrative, it's really based on the idea that Asian Americans can escape these systemic barriers that minorities have because of the culture and because they are family oriented and have a strong emphasis on education. Like what do you have to say about that?
I actually just really don't like it. The fact that they used Asians in their own narrative and twisted it to make others believe that we're like the prime example. Like the fact that it's called model minority, it's like why try and pit us against each other, because in the end we are still a minority. Like what if they called it like the model citizen myth? Like that would be completely different in my opinion than model minority myth, because it's like it's always going to remind you that, hey, you may be doing great in this country, but guess what, you're still going to be a minority.
Yeah.
And that's like something that's just so it's very, especially in like the time that we're in right now, it's a very heavy and almost exhausting thing to think about, because it's just like I personally don't think that we're gonna get away from it in this lifetime. It is just so rooted in us, and with the way that people are growing up, and even though we are attempting and making progress to changing the systems and whatnot, like we're what, 20, 21, I don't know how old you guys are, but like I personally really don't think that the model minority myth is going to disappear. Like I want to hope, but that, like, obviously that's just my opinion, but it's so ingrained because of the way that history and because of the way that America has written history, that it's like I'm afraid for my children, honestly. And that's like a very personal thing for me. I'm afraid for my children that they're gonna have to live in a kind of a different form of the model minority myth, but it's still going to be the model minority myth. Does that kind of make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I get that. So how do you see things like between like the tension between like the African American and Asian American communities? Because I know that's a big topic today. With the resurgence of BLM and like the converse to the theory that Asians do well because of the culture is also the converse of that is that the reason some minorities, like you talking about your class that focused on the Latinx community and African Americans, like that it predicates the idea that they're not doing it right, that they don't, because of their family structure or lack of emphasis on education. I like a lot of people say like really racist things and they'll be like, pull your pants up and stuff like that. It's like really targeted towards African Americans, and it characterizes people like minorities who don't do well as like lazy and stuff like that, versus like hardworking Asians. And so that's where you have that wedge. So I'm curious, like, where do you see the future? Because this kind of creates tension between the Asian American and African American community.
No, yeah, for sure. I think especially now with everything that's happening with the Black Lives Matter movement and whatnot, I want to say that I'm very thankful for the realization of a lot of Asian Americans, especially our generation, who, like, to be real, like I know we all know Asian Americans who say the N-word, who like love and just adore Black culture, but when it comes down to it, to supporting them and everything that's happening, like, where they at? And it's I think one of the biggest quotes that I remember seeing when I was trying to kind of advocate on my Instagram and whatnot during like the whole last week was it said something to the effect of like, dear Asian Americans, yes, we've faced discrimination, but we've never been dehumanized. And I think that's a really big thing, because a lot of Asians, like, they might, especially when COVID happened before all of this, obviously, like, a lot of Asians were discriminated against with the whole Chinese virus or like, things like that. But at the same time, it's like, African Americans and the Black community have had it very bad. They've had it really, really bad. And I say this I honestly say this with my chest. Like Asians have gone through it, but African Americans have gone through it as well. And
Mhm.
I think it's a conversation that, like I said, I'm very glad that our generation has kind of the opportunity and the power to change their mindset. Because I don't know about like y'all's parents, but my parents right now, like they know what's happening, but to them it's kind of just like, oh, like, we never really had to deal with this, so I don't
Mhm.
know why you're dealing with it now. And I think that's something that I've talked to a lot of Filipinos at least, and that's one of their problems, trying to explain why the Black Lives Matter movement is so important to a generation of parents who never really had to uh, kind of do anything about it, but which in itself is a problem, in my opinion.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's the greatest thing about, our generation is that we
Mhm.
have the power now to change our mindset and to, use our words and our actions to really try and make that change in our society. And I know you said that, you're scared that your children will be dealing with the model and minority myth, but not what we're dealing with currently, a different form of it. And I know for me, I also worry about, my kids in the future growing up and dealing with, that model minority or that just being seen as, a minority in general. But with our generation, we have the power to teach. So like you said, you were teaching your parents, you're trying to explain to your parents. I know you were very active on Instagram. I know a lot of us were. Um, our just sharing posts on our Instagram stories and just trying to teach other people about what's going on now. We have that ability to do it and, to bring about change from it. And, whether it's we're just trying to raise awareness or we're teaching our parents or we're going to be teaching our kids in the future, why this was such an important part of history. Like this is, and I think that's the greatest part of our generation is that we have this ability to teach and make change, and I think it's really incredible.
Yeah, no, I agree. That excites me that like we have the like the possibility to do it, but the problem is like this. It all comes down to voting in a sense, and young people historically are not good at it, and I'm hoping that'll change. And that Asian Americans are also not good at voting. Our voter turnout as a bloc is poop, and it's really upsetting. Um, it, but voting is the future, and that's how we're gonna make this change. We really need to understand. I think a lot of Asian Americans do, especially like younger Asian Americans, understand that like white supremacy is an obstacle for all of us, like no, like all minorities, and
Yeah.
the only way you can mathematically, get over white supremacy and at least like voting for people who, you know, will fight for better policies is by teaming up together to get a greater chunk of the vote. That's the only way you can do it, is with a coalition of people and allies who understand the greater issues of systemic oppression. Go to the ballot box and people running for office. That's something that is not possible when you have the model minority myth as a wedge between communities.
Okay, so thank you again, Julia, for joining us in the SituAsian Room for the model minority myth. But before you go, Zach and I prepared questions for every guest interviewee that joins us on our podcast. So it's 4 questions. Just I know you didn't prepare for this, but just I know you can answer them. So I'll start off with, what does it mean to be AAPI?
I'm sorry, I'm nervous because you said this is for all the guests, like the interviewees, but I'm the first one.
Julia,
good.
I get it. I get it. I get
Julia,
it.
I took this
Okay.
question from you.
What?
The 5.
Oh, right. Oh,
I
I
took this
get it
question from
now.
you.
Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy. Okay, what does it mean to me? Um, Honestly, it means everything to me. My Filipino identity, and like moreover my Asian slash kind of Spanish identity, um, it writes everything that I do. Not writes, that's a bad word. It connects to everything I do. I wouldn't be the person who I am today. Did I say that right? Sometimes I translate like stuff in my head like Tagalog, and it's just like it sounds better in Tagalog. But I wouldn't be the person that I am today if it wasn't for the Filipino values that my family instilled in me, and moreover the ones that I learned on my own. Just because all love to the Filipinos, but there's a bit of toxicity in there. Toxicity. Oh my God, we toxic sometimes. So really, kind of just using that to, try and define what my future will be. That to me explains how much I care about it. Like it's literally my identity. Like that is my personality trait, Filipino.
Oh, all right. Next question. What is your favorite Asian dish?
Oh, that's so hard.
Just drop a few.
That's
It's hard to pick
so
favorites. I'm the worst at
hard.
picking favorites.
Okay, let's see. Can I say like a few in different cultures?
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Okay. I'll say I be loving my KBBQ, but
Ooh.
honestly at KBBQ I really like the side dish, like the radish. I really like the radish.
I love the radish.
I love the radish. I think it's just so great, and I think it's because I really like achara in the Philippines. And I think it's kind of similar because it's both pickled. So I like that, and then I also like, oh my gosh, to everyone who speaks Korean, I'm sorry, but I like, is it tteokbokki, like the rice cakes?
Oh yeah.
Oh gosh, everyone was just like, Julia, what? I really like shawmai in the Chinese culture.
Ooh.
Because I grew up like driving an hour out with my family to the dim sum cart.
Yes.
So I really like shawmai. Let's see. I'm avoiding the Philippines because it's so hard. But in the Philippines, I do be liking my lechon, which is really bad for my heart, like the roast pig. And then I also like, and this is a very controversial topic, I like dinuguan. Don't hate me.
Do?
I like dinuguan. Don't hate me. Oh
No,
gosh,
I
one
like
of the hosts hate me. Okay, good.
Is that
I like dinuguan.
the egg?
No, that's balot.
I don't-
I've eaten balot. I have.
It's really good.
It is. I don't know. And then I had one more really good Asian dish, but I forgot.
Julia, how would you describe dinuguan for Zach?
Dinuguan-
Yeah, I have no idea. And for other
I-
people who are not familiar with Filipino culture.
I never okay, let's say the nickname of it is chocolate soup because it's a really dark brown, but the reason why it's dark brown is because it's made out of pig's blood.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So,
There's like a pig's blood Chinese thing too. It's like a cube. My
is it
dad
like a
tried to tell me it was
sausage?
chocolate, and it wasn't chocolate.
Why?
I like
You gotta use all of the animal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I like
you do.
dinuguan, but I don't like blood sausages. Like in Europe, they have blood sausages, and I'm just
Oh.
not for it. But like, hit me up with that dinuguan.
Mhm.
It's decent out here. And then I like in Cambodia. I don't know what it's called, but there's like a dish that's like a halo halo, which is like an ice fruit type of mixture.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I like that.
Wow,
I like
Cambodia.
food.
Well, okay. All right. Who would you say is your AAPI role model?
You took this question from me too. That's crazy. What a question. Okay, an AAPI role model. I'm gonna say half of my role model. I'm just gonna say, because I'm trying to believe in myself more, I think my past life or like my past experiences. So I'm gonna say me as a role model, but that's only because I'm trying to love myself. But like an actual real role model, I think I wanna say I don't know who my Asian role model is, actually. I could go with my Lola. My grandma. I could go with her. I might just go with her. Am I gonna go with her?
Yeah, why not?
I
Because
think it's so
Do you have like
funny
a favorite
because Julia answered
celebrity
this question-
or
Julia answered this question like 2 weeks ago.
but I already gave John Ray a shout out the other day, so I don't want to give him another one if you're I'm gonna go, let's see, celebrity wise. I've actually always looked up to what's his name? Oh my gosh, the Bruno Mars.
Oh,
I do
yeah.
like Bruno Mars. Yeah, I like Bruno Mars. I like Bruno Mars. One for his music, two for his like persona and stuff,
Yeah.
and three because he's one of the people that I feel like just always uh stays true to himself, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
and
Yeah.
he can get down with it. So I'll say Bruno Mars. It's a
All
really
right.
bad answer. Ugh.
No, there's no bad answers. All right, last question. How can people connect with you?
Oh, what a great question.
Like it all.
So my Instagram is at the A little thingy. Okay, Juju98 Lopez. I'm gonna spell it out now. JUJU98, the numbers, Lopez, Lopez. And if you can't find me there, find me on Emilie's Instagram. And that's all I'm gonna say because my Snapchat name is from 4th grade and I don't really use it because I don't like my face. Aha.
All good. All good. All right. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. We love having you. Yeah, it's been a great first interview.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is so exciting.
Thank you guys for tuning into this episode of the SituAsian Room. The SituAsian Room is produced by Crimson Planet Media. Make sure to check us out on our website, www.situasianroom.com, and follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook at the SituAsian Room for more content.
We want to hear from you guys. Send us messages through our website, Instagram, and Facebook, and let us know what you want us to talk about. Thanks again for joining us on this step of our journey through Asian America. Once again, my name is Emilie Villaverde.
And I'm Zach King.
So Zach, same time next week.
Sure, same place.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll see you guys next time.
We're done.
Wait, what goes after this?